Lively here.
Colleen Hoover.
And It Ends With Us is in theaters now, so grab your friends, wear your florals, and head out to see it.
Hey everyone, Justin Baldoni here, and I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much to all of you who have supported us from the very beginning, from when we optioned the book and announced it. How this has been a passion project and something that has been so near and dear to my heart and so many, and it wouldn't happen without you.
We have breaking news coming straight from the Southern District of New York, and yes, it's a major update, besties. Judge Louis Lyman has just handed down a new ruling that could completely reshape the ongoing legal battle involving Blake Lively, her husband Ryan Reynolds, their company Vanzan Incorporated, and former Baldoni publicist Stephanie Jones. Now, you might be wondering, why exactly does this ruling matter so much? Well, it's because Judge Lyman issued a decision regarding the counterclaims that Jennifer Abel filed against Stephanie Jones. While the judge did dismiss several federal hacking claims, two of the most significant allegations survived, and these could be the ones causing the most serious repercussions because they go straight to the heart of the controversy. So, what exactly is the story here? It's all about how Jennifer Abel's phone data ended up in the hands of Blake Lively, how it was accessed without her permission, how she was subsequently locked out of her accounts, and how that data eventually flowed through Vanzan in what Abel claims was a sham litigation, culminating in a lawsuit against both Justin Baldoni and Abel, filed by Blake Lively. We're going to break down exactly what this ruling means for Abel, for the parties involved, and for the broader implications on Stephanie Jones and Blake Lively. And here's a critical point. For Stephanie Jones, this ruling could now carry potential criminal exposure because California's penal code, specifically Section 502, includes criminal provisions. This means California prosecutors could now have reason to take a closer look. So, let's first go over what Abel actually won in this motion to dismiss. Judge Lyman dismissed certain federal statutes, including the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the Stored Communications Act, and the Wiretap Act. These claims fell short on the technical pleading requirements, but that doesn't mean Abel walked away empty-handed. She still has two very powerful claims moving forward: California Penal Code Section 502 and conversion. As for the federal claims, Abel has been given the opportunity to amend them, and we'll dive into those in the next part of this series. Now, let's break down what Section 502 actually means. Under California Penal Code 502, which is California's computer crime statute, it is unlawful to knowingly access someone else's data without their permission. Importantly, the law doesn't require the data to be sensitive, confidential, or even related to business. It simply matters that the access was knowing and unauthorized. If someone enters another person's digital accounts, phone, or storage without permission, that is a violation. And here's a key point. It doesn't matter if Stephanie Jones claims she was using her work phone. The focus is on the fact that the data belonged to Abel. Abel alleges that Jones knowingly accessed her phone data, including information stored on her iCloud account. Judge Lyman ruled that Abel's pleadings were sufficient, meaning she established a plausible case that unauthorized access occurred. In the judge's order, it was explicitly stated that Abel had adequately alleged knowledge on the part of Jones and her team that their access was without permission. Abel contends that she provided her passcode only for the limited purpose of transferring her phone number, and that afterward, Jones and her associates accessed her phone only because they retained control over her iCloud account without consent. Furthermore, because they had access to her iCloud, Jones and her team could bypass password protections that would otherwise have blocked them. These allegations, when read together with the rest of her counterclaim, create a very strong narrative. For example, Abel argues that using a personal phone in a public relations role is common, and that Jones Works had no formal policies granting them the right to monitor her phone. Her agreement to port her personal number to a work phone was made with the expectation that she would retain sole and exclusive access to all contents and private data. Abel had no reason to suspect that Jones Works would access this information improperly. Otherwise, she would never have turned over her device without first arranging security measures. Yet, despite lacking Abel's consent, Jones and her associates accessed, reviewed, and potentially disseminated this information. Taken together, these allegations plausibly justify relief. Jones argued it didn't matter that she accessed the phone because it was a work device. But the judge's perspective is clear. Abel's claim that there was no policy granting Jones the right to monitor the phone, combined with her expectation of exclusive access, is taken as fact at this stage. She turned over the device believing her private data would remain secure, a belief that, if proven, places serious questions about the subsequent use of that data. At the heart of this is the fact that the data allegedly accessed by Jones is the same data that eventually ended up in Blake Lively's hands and, ultimately, in the lawsuit against Justin Baldoni and Abel. This strikes at the core of the evidence and could have profound consequences for Blake Lively. Turning to conversion, this is an old legal doctrine often described as civil theft. It occurs when someone takes or interferes with another person's property, depriving them of its use. Abel alleges that she was locked out of her phone accounts, her phone number, two-factor authentication codes, and her ability to access both personal and professional accounts. She spent significant time and resources regaining access. The judge concluded that these allegations plausibly demonstrate damages, allowing the claim to survive. When we combine the two claims, it's clear. One establishes the wrongful act of unauthorized access to her phone and data, while the other establishes the tangible harm of being locked out and deprived of control. Abel's passcode was given strictly to port her number to a new phone. Once taken, her phone and associated data were allegedly accessed without permission, and she was denied control. Significantly, California law applies because the acts occurred in California, which could pose challenges for Blake if strict geographic interpretations are applied. Abel doesn't need federal hacking statutes to move forward. Section 502 and conversion claims are enough to take the case into discovery, trial, and force answers about the path the data took, from her phone, to Stephanie Jones, to Vanzan, and finally into Blake Lively's court filings. Proving this chain could have enormous consequences for Blake's lawsuit against Baldoni, Abel, Tag, and others. Regarding the dismissed federal claims, the judge allowed amendments. For instance, the Stored Communications Act was dismissed because Abel did not clearly specify whether her data was accessed from storage, like iCloud, Gmail, or WhatsApp, versus directly from her phone. Any amendment will need to show precisely what was taken from cloud storage versus the phone itself. If Abel can provide evidence, such as screenshots known to have originated from iCloud, it could revive the claim. Similarly, the Wiretap Act requires proof of interception in real time. Abel must show that communications were monitored as they were transmitted, not just after the fact. For invasion of privacy under California law, the judge noted that the complaint lacked detail about the offensive nature of the intrusion, which will need to be addressed in amendments. The amendment needs to clearly outline the humiliation Abel experienced, the intensity of having her personal phone content exposed, and exactly how it violated her most intimate expectations of privacy. The narrative should emphasize that this was far more than a simple technical breach. It was a deeply invasive act. One key point the judge highlighted in his ruling relates to Abel's argument in her brief responding to the motion to dismiss. She claimed that the Jones party selectively disclosed her private communications to create a false impression of Abel's involvement in a supposed smear campaign, a campaign that Jones' works allegedly knew was entirely false. However, the judge noted that these allegations aren't actually present in her counterclaim. The closest reference is in paragraph 93, where Abel alleges that some messages were sliced, diced, cherry-picked, massaged, and in certain instances, outright altered. Without concrete claims showing the false light cast on her, Abel cannot establish a valid claim under the false light theory. She needs to demonstrate exactly which messages were altered, which private messages were made public, and how they were manipulated to mislead the public. Currently, the citations are too vague and lack sufficient specifics. Similarly, the claims for intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress were deemed too general by the judge. Abel must show how being locked out of her accounts and the unauthorized use of her phone data caused significant distress, anxiety, or other harm. She also needs to explain why the conduct was outrageous. This may include ongoing stress, sleepless nights, or reputational damage she suffered. At this stage, her claims are vague, lacking details about the real-world impact she experienced. To properly plead these claims, Abel must provide more precise and concrete specifics. The promissory fraud allegations are also vague. Abel claims that she handed over her phone with the expectation that access was granted solely for the purpose of porting her number. Jones' works allegedly promised that her phone number would be returned to her and that she would retain access. Abel gave her passcode only for that limited purpose. To strengthen this claim, Abel must clearly specify the elements of the fraud, the exact promise made, the reliance on that promise, and the intent behind it. She needs to clarify who made the promise, when it was made, and how she relied on it to her detriment. Without these details, the claim is unlikely to hold. Sharper detail is especially needed regarding iCloud access for the Stored Communications Act, the Wiretap Act, and claims relating to privacy, reputation, and emotional distress. At present, there aren't enough examples or proof provided. However, because Abel has the opportunity to amend these claims, they are far from dead. With better evidence and more detailed pleadings, these claims could be revived. So, what does all this mean for Stephanie Jones? Essentially, two significant claims are moving forward. The hacking allegations under Section 502 survive, placing Jones, once Justin Baldoni's publicist, front and center. She is alleged to have accessed Abel's phone and data illegally. Meanwhile, the conversion claim directly ties Jones to the harm, the lockouts, loss of control, and the costs Abel incurred. It doesn't matter whether the information was private or public, business or personal. The judge ruled that Jones had no right to access it. Discovery will allow Abel to obtain communications, emails, and digital footprints left by Stephanie Jones. Here's where it gets risky for Jones. Section 502 is not just a civil statute. It also carries potential criminal liability. Evidence uncovered during the civil case could expose Jones to criminal scrutiny in California if prosecutors decide to intervene. If discovery reveals criminal intent or actions, Abel could potentially provide that information to law enforcement. Jones is now in a precarious position because, if Abel proves her claims, Jones is the one who illegally accessed the data and set all subsequent events into motion. Now, what about Blake Lively and Vanzan? Abel's central allegation is that Jones accessed the phone and its data. But the stolen material did not stop there. It was allegedly funneled through Vanzan, Blake and Ryan's company. Abel claims that this access began on August 21st, highlighted by a phone call to Melissa Nathan stating, "I saw the text messages. You're going to get sued." Abel alleges that the stolen data was used to bypass contracts, including those for Wayfair, and that Jones breached her contract by releasing private client information to others. The subpoenas issued through Vanzan, according to Abel, were a sham designed to give legal legitimacy to data that had been illegally obtained. Judge Lyman has already allowed Abel to access Vanzan's internal emails and communications. This means discovery will probe exactly how the chain of custody worked. Did Jones send screenshots to Vanzan? Did Vanzan's lawyers know the data was unlawfully obtained? Did Blake's team knowingly use stolen information in their filings? If Abel can establish this chain from her phone to Jones to Vanzan and finally to Blake, the implications are massive. It could prove that Jones handed stolen data to Blake, that Blake's team built a case on tainted evidence, and that the court could exclude that evidence. Abel could potentially recover punitive damages against Jones under Section 502. Sanctions could also be imposed if it is shown that Blake's side knowingly used this data. This ruling keeps the door wide open for Abel to argue that Vanzan was nothing more than a sham lawsuit designed to launder stolen data into Blake's case. Because the judge preserved Section 502 and conversion claims, these are not going away. Even if Abel amends her complaint, these claims will remain intact. It is expected that Abel will amend her complaint by October 31st, and following that, another motion to dismiss is likely. However, the judge has already acknowledged that her claims are properly stated, meaning these key allegations will continue to move forward. After Abel amends her complaint, it's very likely that another motion to dismiss will be filed. These motions are pretty standard in legal cases. They're procedural, but they always give the other side a chance to argue that claims shouldn't proceed. However, here's the important thing. The judge has already recognized that Abel properly stated her claims. That means it's highly unlikely that any new amended complaint would be dismissed outright. Essentially, the court has already validated that her case is merit, which is a huge boost for her side. Now, here's where things get really interesting, and why this flips the Vanzan situation entirely. Even if Blake and her team viewed the Vanzan subpoena as legal from their perspective, it was not legally sound from Stephanie Jones' side. Section 502 has survived this ruling, and it's a major deal. If Abel can prove her claims in front of a jury and at trial, it will establish that Stephanie Jones never had authorization to access Abel's phone. And this is critical. We're not just talking about iCloud data here. The violation concerns the actual phone and all the data contained on it. It's important to understand how subpoenas work. A subpoena can only compel a person or a company to hand over information they have a lawful right to possess or control. If Jones' possession of Abel's data resulted from unauthorized access under Section 502, then she never had a lawful right to that data in the first place. That has huge implications. It means any subpoena directed at Jones, or any materials she provided in response, could be considered tainted because it involves property obtained illegally. In other words, the subpoena itself could be seen as illegitimate because it required the production of stolen material. Abel alleges that the DOE lawsuit was essentially being used as a laundering mechanism, a way to make illegal access appear formal and legitimate. If this allegation is proven, any evidence obtained through that process could potentially be excluded from the case. The idea that a lawsuit could be used as a cover for stolen material is massive because it directly ties Blake and Ryan to the use of unlawfully obtained data. If Abel proves this chain, it completely undermines the evidentiary foundation of Blake's case. Anything funneled through Jones and Vanzan would be considered tainted from the very beginning. And here's the kicker. If Blake's legal team knew, or should have known about how the data was sourced, the stakes escalate dramatically. This opens the door for sanctions, punitive damages, and reputational consequences for all parties involved. This scenario also opens the possibility for Abel to add Blake Lively herself to the lawsuit. Under California Penal Code 502, liability isn't limited to the person who directly accessed the data. It extends to anyone who knowingly aids, assists, solicits, or benefits from unauthorized access. If Abel can show that Jones accessed the data unlawfully and that Blake and Vanzan knowingly used it, then Blake herself could be directly liable under Section 502. This is a serious development that could dramatically change the landscape of the case. The fact that Vanzan may have been a sham, essentially a shell used to funnel stolen data, strengthens Abel's case significantly. If Vanzan was indeed a mechanism to move stolen data into litigation, and if discovery reveals that Blake knew the data's origin, she could be named in the civil liability directly. Depositions have already been taken, and there are existing emails and communications between Vanzan and Jones. That means any amendment to Abel's complaint could feasibly include Blake or Vanzan, making the legal stakes even higher. Expect some major developments in the near future. This ruling impacts both the civil case that Blake filed against Baldoni, Abel, and Tag, and it also serves as a stark warning to Blake and Stephanie. This case is moving forward, and your evidence could be compromised. Moreover, this opens up potential criminal exposure if California prosecutors decide to investigate. It's a high-risk situation that could have far-reaching implications. Some viewers might be disappointed that certain federal claims were dismissed. But here's the silver lining. Abel can still replead those claims with additional evidence and specific examples. Some of these claims might survive the second round, though they were always considered long shots. The real win here is Section 502. That's the claim that truly matters, and it's officially moving forward. This is a major moment for Abel. It strengthens her position that her data was stolen and weaponized against her in Blake's lawsuit. It also completely undermines the narrative from Blake's attorneys that Vanzan was a normal, legal process and that they had a right to use the data. Their denials about knowing how Abel's phone was accessed are likely baseless. Abel claims she has evidence showing that Blake and her team knew about her texts on the very day her phone was taken, meaning the knowledge of unauthorized access may have existed from day one. This development raises broader questions too. Could this set a precedent for other cases involving stolen digital data being funneled into litigation? What does this mean for companies that use shell companies or third parties to obtain information? The implications could ripple far beyond just this case. So, what do you think? Are you surprised that this ruling strongly favored Jen? How do you think her amended complaint will look? And how might Blake and Ryan spin this narrative in the media to maintain their public image? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, bestie.